Hello, everyone. Well, this is the last session today, right? Yes, it's been a long day. I'm sure that you must be very tired today, but hang on a little bit more. We have very interesting session starting right now. So we are talking about the global tech giants coming to Korea and more. We have a great, fantastic speakers today on stage. Let me introduce Mr. Masami Takahashi, President of Uber Japan, and Patrick Lee, Country Manager of Airbnb Korea, and Doyle Chung, Country Director of Airbnb Korea. And I'm Jeffrey Lim, Head of Campus Seoul. Campus Seoul is a part of global network of Google for Entrepreneurs. We are here to help startups in Korea going global and then bring startups from abroad to coming to Seoul. So I will, let me ask you to introduce yourselves first to the guest.
Hi, good to see you everyone. My name is Patrick Lee. Korean name is Junkyoo Lee. I'm Korea Country Manager for Airbnb. I joined Airbnb like 1.5 years ago, and then because I believed in the potential of the tourism market in Korea. And then just before Airbnb, I worked for Google for 8 years. Good to see you guys.
Hi everyone, my name is Masami Takahashi with Uber Japan. I joined Uber about a year ago, and prior to that I was working for Sony in Silicon Valley. The reason I joined Uber was because living in San Francisco, I really saw how services like Uber and Airbnb were really changing the face of people's lives, and I really wanted to bring that innovation to my home country, which is Japan. So nice to meet you all.
Hi, this is Doyle Chung, and country director at Airbnb. I joined a year ago at Airbnb Korea. So we are one of the fast growing in the mobile analytic company in the worldwide. So our base in San Francisco. We have an office in the Gangnam Station. So we're providing all the mobile analytic data to all company and startups and Samsung and those clients who wants to know about the business intelligence about in mobile industry. Thank you. Nice to see you guys.
All right, thank you, people. So to start, Korea is a pretty big market. Korea is known for the second largest mobile app store market in the world. I think that's probably one of the reasons why global startups coming into Korea and then wishes to do business in Seoul. Other than mobile app store, we are pretty big in e-commerce and as well as some manufacturing technologies as well. I'd like to ask all of you here, how did you identify the unique opportunities in Korea? Why did you decide to come into Korea? And is there any strategic way to identify the uniqueness in each market? Can you go over, please?
Yeah. As you know, Airbnb is about just handling the tourism opportunity. And then, as you know, also tourism about the culture. Actually, just the way we identify the opportunities that we look at the individual people. I mean, rather than just macro trend in the kind of society and the country in the market. So before we come to the Korea, actually just we look at the individual people who is already using Airbnb. And then just we spend a lot of time with them, and then we try to empathize about their needs and pain points. And then we started from there. And then we try to come up with some persona, and then just with that persona, we could draft some detailed growth plan. So there was a kind of, and then at the same time, it is very important to read the macro trend in the market. So we mix those two, just micro level and macro level. That is the way to identify the opportunity in Korea.
Patrick, do you have any other specific numbers that you are looking at in each cities or countries to start
numbers?
With? Yes, like usage data or number of tourists in specific cities. How do you find out which city you have to go enter?
Yeah, also at the same time, just we really need to see the trend for the free independent travelers. We look at the trend, and then that is the primary factor where we go first. Yeah.
And Masami, how did you find out unique opportunities in Tokyo?
So in Tokyo, I guess it's kind of similar to Seoul in the sense that there is a real abundance of taxis and limousine hires. But there is a very low utilization of these because basically it's an industry that's existed for a long time and hasn't really taken advantage of technology the way many companies, IT companies in particular, in the Valley have. So the thesis was basically how do we bring that layer of technology and innovation on top of the existing services that exist to make them more efficient and more reliable. Basically, more efficiency means more income and more revenue opportunities for the drivers. And with higher efficiency, that translates into more reliability and hopefully eventually lower costs for the riders. So it's kind of a win-win between the drivers and the riders.
So I think AppAny has been around in Korea for a few years, right? How did you decide to come into Korea with your service?
In terms of App Store, I think that in 40,000 apps in every month, actually in the mobile, you see that like for me as a personally, I have like hundreds of apps in my mobile device. So I think we found the opportunity for the every apps store, which is like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google and Apple. I mean, they're actually releasing apps in every month and every year. So I think we found the opportunity that most of the revenue in worldwide is about the game in Korea specifically. But in terms of some usage, I mean, we found some big opportunity for mobile users. In terms of penetration rate, it's like Korea is like more than 30% to use a whole the population. So I think that's one of the things that we found that the mobile users and mobile opportunity through the app analytics, it would be great. So that's why we jump into Korea, and 3 years now, I think it's getting well for the market.
I see, yes. Maybe we can talk more about the mobile app store market in Korea in overall. In recent, since last year, we have seen many foreign startups, foreign companies coming into Korea market. For example, Supercell came in, King.com came in, and Airbnb already has been doing business in Korea. Do you see any other trends or any other opportunities in Korean market when foreign startups or foreign tech companies come into Korea? What trends are you looking at right now?
I think there's a top 5 categories, and we can think of it. So first one is like a messenger, which is everybody using the Kakao every day. So, but second one is like a travel and accommodation, like Airbnb is launched in Korea as well. So I think that's one of the sharing economy through the service would be the transportation as Uber, and accommodation is the Airbnb. That's the second top. And third one is about the music and video streaming. So there's people like for the LTE infrastructure in Korea. I think it's more people using consuming the data through the video and music player. So that's top 3 the categories, and I think that's one of the great opportunity for the APAC and Japan and Korea, and in terms of app store strategy.
Well, for example, the messengers, do you see any cultural barrier for foreign startups, for tech companies coming to Asian markets? Kakao is dominating Korea, and Line is doing very well in Asia countries. Do you see there are opportunities for Western tech startups doing messenger business in Asia?
I think in terms of the Asia market, I mean, every country is a different perspective and different actual aspect. So even like Japan, Korea, we have a very different characteristics. So in terms of the messenger, I think in Korea Kakao is dominating. So somehow the Western startup and some startup in Korea to the global, I think it's somehow that it's not just only focused on the messenger, but it's how you're gonna collaborate with the messengers. Like for example, for the big conglomerate company who actually launching some apps using the connected device. So when somebody who actually texts a message through the app and into moving the vacuum machine in Korea, vacuum machine in home actually. So and then it's just using messenger platform to operating those home devices. So I mean that's one of the examples that how you can use a messenger platform with through that platform, which is we dominating each countries.
Thank you. I have a question for Patrick. So Airbnb is growing very fast in Korea among the Korean users, and also foreign tourists who wish to come to Korea. what's your growth strategy in Korea in general?
Actually, as I told you previously, just the first thing we did was to identify the user. I mean, identify the typical persona who is already our users. So we started from there. I mean, the reason why is that sure, even though Airbnb is just kind of big startup, but we don't have enough budget and resource, so we cannot boil the sea. So we tried to come up with the kind of homogeneous and very specific group to target at. And then what I believe is that viral is the kind of most powerful, maybe the only way for the growth strategy for the startup. That's why just we come up with the persona, typical persona, and then just we come up with the very specific homogeneous group consisting of the persona. Just we try to saturate that segment group so far, and then that is our kind of growth strategy for the short term. And then as a long term, I believe that if we saturate that segment group, I believe just that specific segment can accelerate the viral impact all across the market. So that is our long-term growth strategy.
Do you focus inbound travelers or outbound travelers?
Korea is a very unique market. Just all over the world, just Korea is a unique market in that inbound and outbound, both is very strong. Yeah.
I see. You are not really focusing on one specific group.
Yeah, both,
okay,
yeah.
I see. Masami, so since Uber introduced its service in Tokyo, how did you grow your business in Tokyo, and what was your growth strategy?
Right. So in Tokyo or in Japan, Uber is actually registered as a travel agency. So it's a pretty unique setup. And what we do is we partner with existing taxi companies and limousine hire companies to, again, increase efficiency of their cars. What that does is it allows the rider to find cars within a few minutes from where they are, and more revenue opportunities for drivers, increases cars, which means more efficiency for riders, makes it more reliable. The way we've grown is in terms of on the marketing side, it's very similar to the way I guess you guys look at the world. We really focus on having the user take their first ride. So what I always say is riding is believing. When you take your first ride, you really understand what the value is. There's so many different uniquenesses and about the whole experience that you believe it once you take your first ride. So we focus a lot of our marketing and PR activities on that. When it comes to targeting customers and segments, one unique angle that we look at is tourists. So Japan as a country is trying to double the number of tourists over the coming years, foreign tourists coming in. And one of the advantages of the Uber platform is that it's a global platform. So it's been 5 years since we started our services in San Francisco, and now we're in 57 countries and over 300 cities. And it's a common platform. So no matter where you go in the world, you open the Uber app and you see cars. Behind the scenes, the business model and the operations are completely localized. So it's a great way. I'm a traveler in Seoul today, and you open the app and the car is there, and it's the same experience. That gives them the tourist a peace of mind. So that's something that we're really focusing on. And when we think about expanding beyond Tokyo into other cities, that's definitely an angle that we look at. The second point is more around regional revitalization. So we tend to think of Uber in major cities, but there's very different transportation needs in the rural areas or in the smaller cities that we need to understand. Tokyo is a very specific market, probably like Seoul is in Korea, and understanding those needs there and offering that layer of technology to improve efficiency of transportation in those areas is a focus for us moving forward.
So can you disclose some numbers, like how many drivers you have in Tokyo, or how many rides per day, something like that?
So on a global scale, we do about over 1 million trips a day. I often get asked this question about how many cars, but we actually don't look at the world that way. Because even if there are hundreds or thousands of cars, if it's in the wrong place at the wrong time, it's not going to create any value to the rider. So what we look at is what the ETA is, how long the average customer has to wait for their ride to come. And the ETA in Tokyo is now about 7 minutes. So we've worked that down from be over 10 minutes when we first launched down to 7. But our goal is to get to the realm of 2 to 3 minutes which is where cities like San Francisco and New York are already.
Oh, okay. That's the number you are tracking. So you mentioned that your global platform across the 57 countries, 57 cities are pretty important. How important is localization in doing business in Tokyo?
Right, so we're in 57 countries, 300 cities. Localization of the actual experience is very minimal. It's a language translation that's done in localization, but I guess what's really most important is the rider-facing portion, so the actual operations. We get a lot of tickets from riders asking questions or comments or so forth, and responding to that in a very local manner, in a timely manner, and providing the level of service that the local people, in Japan expect is very important. One thing that's very interesting is the rating. So as you might know, after each Uber trip, the rider rates the driver. Actually, the driver also rates the rider, but that rating, the average rating in Tokyo is actually lower than many cities around the world. But when you look at the actual experience, the experience in Tokyo is actually pretty good. But that also shows the level of expectation that people have for services in Japan. So we're very, very careful about offering that high level of quality that people demand in Japan.
I see. So same question for you, Patrick. So Airbnb is a global platform too. How did you take your business into Korea by localizing your service?
Actually, travel is about the culture, and then I believe localization is kind of key success factor for our business success. But at the same time, beauty of the global platform is just when there is some kind of center push for the operation, there we can meet some kind of operational excellence. So one of the biggest challenges there, also one of the biggest and common question coming from the people at the market like me, is that what is the optimal point between being localized and then the global push? So people like me just saying that, just at the end of the day, it is the user who is using the platform. Then we need to understand the people. And then to understand the people, we need to empathize with their pain points and needs. To do that, we need to understand the cultural context and then history. So I believe just localization is very important in that sense. But sometimes localization is kind of compromising the quality and then operational excellence pushed by the centralization. So what we did is that we tried to identify the core factor which is driving the global business success first, which cannot be compromised. And then other factors which is not related to those core factors, we try to just jot down pros and cons of localization. So we made a decision for the localization based on those pros and cons.
I see. So for both of your services, you keep the global standard and global quality, and then bring the platform into Seoul, and then you can make a success in local. So, all right. So I have a question for Doyle. So in your opinion, what are the top 3 insights for startups need to watch? I believe that you have been looking at the App data very deep inside. What are the 3 top insights that you have found?
You mean in terms of a market or in terms of categories? Yes. I think it's a market, right?
Yes.
Okay. We actually split 3 different market, which is app superpower, which is Japan and South Korea and US. So those are 3 companies is already saturated for the download standpoint. So that means that when you launch the service in those are app superpower countries, and then you got to go to the monetization because they already know about very easy access for the mobile using standpoint. So you got to know that how their active users' behavior. For example, that how many times and how many sessions and durations they using those service in by seconds and by minute. So those country, and then you can just monetize your services. Those are 3 countries, which is app superpower. And second category is about we said BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, and India, and China, and those are 4 countries that are emerging. So those are people like their mobile infrastructure is expanding so rapidly right now. So for example, in China, the monetization has been actually top number 1. and they beat actually in revenue standpoint in US in actually the first quarter in this year. So that means that you need to know about their download standpoint and revenue standpoint. That's a keep growing both. So that means that you gotta get some user acquisitions, and at the same time you need to consider about the monetization as well. So that the third categories we said on the market to watch, which is the 5 countries about the Southeast Asia. So some Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia, and the Philippines, and Thailand. Those are 5 countries. So they're about some monetization is still considered yet. So that means that you need to get some more users at the first phase, and then after that, and on certain points, and when you gather the users from those 5 countries, and then go for the monetization and through the benchmarking of those 2 different countries like BRICS and App Superpower.
Oh yeah, those are very helpful insights for all startups who wish to expand their markets, I think. I think Patrick, you have been gone through all the business as a foreign startup, tech startups coming to Korea. What advice will you give to other tech giants who are doing global business but also wants to expand their business in Seoul?
I have been working for a foreign company just US company for 15 years, but always just the market manager in Korea is saying that Korea is different. But just there should be a lot of effort to understand what Korean needs, and then what's the Korean users' pain points. Just to do that, I think just the empathizing ability is really, really important, I believe. Because, I found that designers are really good at empathizing with others, but empathizing is very different from the sympathizing. Empathizing is being on others' shoes completely. So to understand the market, not only about the understanding market at the macro level, to understand about your user, their user, empathizing is really, really key, I think. But there could be some barrier, right? Just cultural barrier and then some historical barrier. But I really want to empathize on empathizing, yeah.
I see. So Masami, what advice will you give to those global tech startups coming to Tokyo and Japan market?
I guess one thing is that expect it to take some time, right? I think being patient and persistent is important, especially the newer the initiative is or your venture is, the more time it's going to take people to first understand what you're doing, for them to become comfortable with the idea, right? I think we're in a world where our companies could not have even been thought about years ago, even 5 years ago. But let's talk about 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when some of these regulations and laws were written. People couldn't even imagine the internet or smartphones. And in many instances, we have to go in there and explain what we're doing. In our case, we're not a taxi company. We don't own any cars. We're a technology company. But to really understand that we need to have a two-way conversation. But I think being patient on that and really open about what you're trying to accomplish and the value you're trying to bring is very important. And having that local face in that country is very important. So this is an example outside of Japan, but recently we've actually in the Philippines reached an agreement, and they've actually passed laws to legalize all of Uber services in the Philippines. And I think it's a great inspiration for all of us, all of our countries in APAC and around the world, that this discussions that we're having with regulators actually pays off. And it's a big win for the people of the Philippines, the riders, the drivers, and cities. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to replicate that in many other places, including Japan.
All right, thank you. I think that's a very good tip, advices for startups here. I think we are about to wrap up our discussion here today. So I think with the mobile disruption and then advancements of the technology, we are living in a world that there's no border between the countries. So any startups can do business globally, and then they will bring more growth for all those startups, and then promising more success in their business. So I hope our discussion helped to understand your business today. So thank you very much, Patrick, Masami, and Doyle, and thank you, your audiences. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.